That time I had to follow Reverend Bubba. That's what's coming up on the Art of Bombing, episode 251.
My friend Dan, he's got a podcast, cause all comics need a podcast, and nobody had a podcast called The Art of Bombing. So Dan went out and bought a tape deck. Who knows why he bought a tape deck? Now podcasts don't get played on tape decks, but Dan is from the 80s. So hey there, all you funny jerks, come talk to Dan about your work. Tell him all about your worst times. It's The Art of Bombing.
Welcome to an all-new episode of the Art of Bombing podcast. It is me, your host, Dan Bublitz Jr., and with me, as always, is my co-host and co-producer, Josh Shirley. How are you this week?
I am doing good, my friend. Here's the question of the week for everybody. What are the pros and cons of doing longer bits?
Right, that's a good question. I mean, because when you're working on longer bits, it's harder to do some open mics. You know, you only get 3 minutes, and if your whole bit is 5 minutes, for one, you don't have enough time to even do it at an open mic. And if, you know, it is a 5-minute open mic, it's hard to get your point across, because you have to, before you got to kind of like get the crowd to get to know you, and it's hard for them to get to know you in that short amount of time already. And then if you add a big long bit in there, the payoff at the end result might not be very good.
That's right. Yeah, I see the same thing. Like with I tend to do longer bits, so my stuff is, I can have a story that's 5 minutes, and then I can have a short joke, air quotes, short joke that's, about 90 seconds to 2 minutes. So when I make a set list for an open mic, it's got two things on it, sometimes one. You're right. Yeah, it's difficult to get a lot of reps in on that without breaking those longer bits into pieces, which sometimes fracture the power of the joke, because it's supposed to build and connect.
Yep, absolutely. But I mean, at the end of the day, if you're a storyteller and you have longer bits, eventually you have to work on them. I think it's a matter of you need to try to figure out a way to break it up. And so if you have a bit that's 5 minutes, you have to have, almost like a middle punchline, so where you can like do the first half of the joke at like an open mic, get it so you to where you want it, then do the second half at another open mic. So then eventually you have that full joke, but you have to break it up when you're working it out at open mics.
Yeah, absolutely. Breaking it up is essential to having some kind of growth to fit it inside of the 5 to even 3 minutes that you might have in an open mic scenario. The other thing about it is, if you're out on the road, you're trying to test out an audience, and you've got 3 opening bits and they're all 4 minutes, it can take a minute to really tell or give the audience a chance to get to know you.
Yeah, absolutely. And you really do need to establish that as quick as you can, because the sooner they get to know you and the sooner that they decide that they like you, the sooner you're going to get to that point where you can pretty much do whatever and they'll go along with you.
That's right. That's an interesting topic.
It is. And that's something, a little bit of what, we talk with today. Our guest is Zach Funk, fantastic comic. I met him last year, or not last year. I say last year, but earlier this year at Snow Jam Comedy Festival. And we recorded this episode at the Albuquerque Funny Fiesta, which is a comedy festival in Albuquerque. And and he's a great comic. We have a lot in common because we're both comic book nerds, so we're big nerds. So we immediately when we met, we immediately connected. So I was excited to record this. We actually recorded it in the green room of Dry Heat Comedy Club in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So shout out to them for letting me use the green room to record this episode. So that's what we got coming up on the show. Real quick, I don't know, do you have anything going on that you gotta do? Anything you need to, have a shout out, promote? If you're in Loveland, you can come to my shows in Loveland. I'm gonna be in Windsor, Colorado, on Thursday tonight, the day that this comes out, and then Friday in Loveland at Big Beaver Brewing. I'm producing a show over there, doing a comedy showcase. So that's all I got this week.
Nice. Yeah, I am just doing some writing and mics right now. I do have a show coming up in November, but I'll talk about that on this show when we get closer to it.
when it's better to have it in the front of everybody's minds, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes,
Wow.
indeed.
I hear that. Sometimes it's time is, because we talked about that in our series that we did. If you haven't listened to that, all 3 episodes are out on the RSS feed for the how to produce your own show. We started all the way from the beginning of approaching venues to marketing your show. If you haven't listened to them, go listen to them. But we did talk about this a little bit in there about the timing on when you should start promoting. And, you don't want to be too close to your event so you have time to do it, but also you don't want to go too far out because you want people to remember. If you start promoting too early, they'll forget about it.
That's right. Well, this episode actually has some good tie-ins to that series as well, because you guys spend some time talking about how comedy is just a different art form, and you have to help hosts and people who are organizing the show to set the show up for success, and they might not know how to do that.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I think we're ready to get in this conversation with Zach. Are you ready?
I am ready.
All right. Here is our conversation with Zach Funk. Enjoy.
Hey Bomb Squad, Dan here, and I wanted to let you know that we've completely overhauled the Art of Bombing Patreon page. We've made some changes, improvements, and added some cool new perks that we think you'll enjoy, such as early access to new episodes. They're going to be ad-free, host-free. They get right to the conversation. Another cool perk that we've added are re-released episodes. That's right, every week we're re-releasing a new old episode of the podcast. Right now on the Patreon feed, you can get episodes 1 through 9, and every week we're going to be re-releasing a new old episode. Another cool perk that we're going to be providing are resources, comedy resources such as email templates, checklists, and all kinds of fun stuff that are going to be coming from the Between Bombs series. We're going to be doing monthly and quarterly Q&As and hangs, so you're not going to want to miss out. Go to our Patreon page, subscribe now. It's patreon.com/artofbombingpod and sign up right now.
And now, it's time for the stand-up soundbite.
Before I get to the jokes, I'd like to address a very serious thing. I have a public service announcement for you all. Tomorrow is National Batman Day. So if you ever thought about orphaning a member of the 1%, tomorrow is the time. Fine people, Mr. Small's Fun has a question for you all this evening. Are you optimists? No. Immediately a no. Okay, this is a smart crowd. All right, I heard a few yeses. People would say yes. Follow-up question for you to further this. Do you believe world peace is possible in our time? No. Bunch of fucking jaded cynics. No. I know world peace is coming in our time. And how do I know that, you ask? Because I went to Star Wars night at PNC Park. No, I don't think you understand, naysayers. I was at nerd night at the baseball place. Which means after eons of feuding, the jocks and the nerds put aside their differences for one glorious night of $20 draft beers. It was a really cool game, too. Through a friend of mine, I lucked out and I got to watch the game from, like, the VIP catered box seats. And I got out there and I'm like, oh, I get it now. This is why people vote conservative. If you don't have a soul, you get your own bathroom in a stadium.
It's the art of bombing.
So you just flew into Albuquerque yesterday.
That's correct. Yeah.
We were just talking a little bit about that before I hit the record button. Long day.
Yeah. So I'm very fortunate that one of my best friends lives here in Albuquerque, so I've always got somebody to stay with when I perform here.
That's very convenient.
Yeah. So the flight was Pittsburgh. We left Pittsburgh at 5 a.m. So the boarding was 4:30. So I got there at like 3:30.
Yeah, you're there before the airport's officially open.
Yeah, like not even the newsstand is open. And flight to it was Pittsburgh to Denver, and then Denver to here in Albuquerque. We got delayed leaving Denver for either the dumbest reason I've ever had a flight delayed, or the pilot is a hack comic.
Wanted to do his tight 5 before I take off.
So we got delayed like almost a half an hour. We had boarded the plane and we had to sit there because, according to the pilot, someone had just changed a light bulb on the runway and they were waiting for the paperwork to be finalized before the flight could leave.
Oh my God. Really? For a light bulb? Wow.
I'm sure there's some safety checklist and like documentation you have to do, but like there's a very hacky, how many airline taxes it take to fill out a light bulb paperwork.
Yeah, right.
The plane sat there for an extra half hour.
Oh wow! Did you have a layover in Denver?
Yeah. I had a layover in Denver of about hour and a half or so.
Oh, that ain't so bad.
No.
That's like when you have when you're traveling and you end up with those long layovers. Like they're like 5-6+ hours. It's like, oh man, that's insane.
I don't know. I'd rather have that than last month I did the Portland, Maine Comedy Festival. I had a layover in JFK, and because the flight from Pittsburgh was late, I literally had to like Home Alone run to the gate.
Oh no, yeah,
like
that's never fun.
Like they had finished boarding, but they hadn't closed the door yet, so I was still able to get in.
Just got there right on time.
Yeah.
How was that festival?
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Portland was a real cool city to visit. It was an interesting time. Also, I mean, it was a very fun festival, but it was all more just a really great place to visit. I'd never been there before, and
yeah, it's a beautiful area. I went up there one time on a vacation. Went to like the East Coast, like to Boston, New Hampshire, and Maine, and little like road trip type of thing. So that was cool. That was way before I was into comedy, so no comedy related stuff for me then.
Yeah, no, I had a really nice time. I have this tradition I do that I imagine you'll appreciate is anytime I'm traveling for comedy, if I can, I like to check out local comic shops.
Yep. Same.
So there was I forget the name of the shop. This is going to bug me now. But it was such a cool shop. It was like this neat mix of like punk rock stuff and comic book stuff.
Oh, that's cool.
That's where I have a t-shirt on right now that says Jello Biafra was right about everything. Like I got this at that shop.
That's awesome.
And I generally haven't been a big like buying back issues person, but they had a first printing of the 6th issue of the original Ninja Turtles comic.
Wow.
For like $50.
Wow.
And then so I got that, and I got a first printing of the 3rd issue of the original Tick comic.
Oh, nice.
So it's like, all right, these are things that are just like they're fun for me.
Yeah, right. Yep. You can never go wrong with either of those, especially the Tick. I love the Tick.
Oh no, the Tick is on my future tattoo list.
Oh, like, nice. Are you gonna get a balloon bubble and have it say spoon?
I haven't actually. I have a T-shirt that is like the Rosie the Riveter "We Can Do It" thing, with the Tick doing a muscle and the text at the bottom, instead of saying "We Can Do It," just says spoon.
Nice. I used to have a Tick shirt that was it was like him, but it had the bubble and it said spoon on it.
Okay.
It was great. Can never go wrong with the comic book stuff. Have you today you said you were just kind of wandering around Albuquerque. Did you go check out any shops here?
I didn't today. We're going to do that tomorrow.
Oh,
but
nice.
Last time I was in town, there's a really, really cool shop. If you get a chance to check it out, it's called like Astro Zombie or something like that.
That's where I'm staying with a comic here, and that's what he said. He said I should check that out because he had some comic book related stuff around the house that I started, of course, nerding out and asking about it.
Yeah, so so that's where I went last time I was in town, and that is a really, really cool place to check out.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to check that out. Yeah, because we're here. We're actually in the green room at Dry Heat Comedy Club in downtown Albuquerque, New Mexico. We're here for the Albuquerque Funny Fiesta, which I just hung out last night. And I didn't really. I guess I did an open mic, but I just hung out and went to some of the shows. It's been a pretty good time so far.
Yeah, I did the festival last year as well, and it's a blast. This is my third time performing here, second time doing the festival. Just like I said, since I have a friend to stay with, sometimes I can try to just get stuff in this area, and I've always had a blast here. Everybody's been so nice, and
yeah, very welcoming here.
Yeah.
Seems like a very welcoming scene, which is always good.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, when we met earlier this year at Snow Jam Comedy Festival,
yeah, quite the difference in going from South Dakota,
going from the cold wasteland to the desert.
Yeah, South Dakota in January to New Mexico.
Definitely both wastelands, but very different reasons. Very opposite ends of the spectrum there.
Yeah.
January in South Dakota versus September in Albuquerque. Yeah, that's because it's even for September. I feel like it's pretty warm here.
Yeah, I imagine. I mean, like Pittsburgh this time of year, we still get some summer heat, but there's a lot of like shifting into fall. Where like Pittsburgh is a lot like Portland, Oregon, where we get very few actual nice days a year.
Oh, okay.
It's always just dreary.
Oh, okay. Dreary.
Yeah.
That's never fun living in a town like that. I feel like that can like really weigh on someone's mental health.
It definitely can for some people.
Always just dreary.
I'm fortunate that I have the mental illness where weather doesn't matter.
You're like, I'm just sad anyway.
Yeah, it's just, oh, what? There's less sun now? Great. Now it's more socially acceptable to stay in bed.
Now I have a better reason. I don't need to make up an excuse today. I got one. Thank you, Mother Nature.
Yeah.
Appreciate the assist on that one.
Yeah.
Now, you're on the festival. You got a show, I think, tonight.
Yeah.
By the time this comes out, it'll be too late for people if you're in Albuquerque. But keep coming and supporting the Dry Heat Comedy Club, regardless. But you're on tonight.
Yeah, I'm on tonight, and then I'm on. Well, we're both on one show tomorrow.
Yep.
And then I'm on another show tomorrow night as well.
Nice. You're getting 3 spots.
Yeah.
Wow, look at you moving on up.
That's a nice one. I mean, I'm hosting the thing tonight here, and that just was such an honor to get asked to host. Like when you're an out of town comic, getting asked to host something at a festival is a big like sign of like respect and like,
absolutely,
like what you do, so.
Absolutely. Well, I'm sure it's going to be a good show.
Yeah.
I was here, like I said, last night, watched some of the stuff and watched the open mic, and the person headlining the show that you're on tonight was on the open mic and had a really good set. It was fun to watch. So I imagine a headlining set is going to be fantastic.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm really excited.
Yeah, I might try to catch that show tonight. I'm going to go see the Mike Kaplan show.
Okay.
And then I'm going to try to come back down this way. So.
Yeah.
Because I'm a big fan of Mike Kaplan, so
yeah,
I'm excited that he was hanging out last night. He did the mic and he jumped on some shows and he's just hanging out.
Yeah, no, he's been in Pittsburgh a few times. I know he either just recently did a show in Pittsburgh or has a show in Pittsburgh coming up. Like I remember seeing a poster for him somewhere very recently.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting because it's like as a comic, like you can be a fan of comedy, but it's hard to go see other comics.
Yeah,
because when they're performing, hopefully you're performing, but it's always, obviously not on the same shows. You're over here somewhere across the country and they're over wherever.
Yeah.
Or if they come to your town, you're out of town for a show or something like that. And it's like,
No, I've got a thing in October, somebody I really wanted to see in Pittsburgh, but I already like him and made plans to go out of town that weekend with some friends. Like, okay, well, I'd love to see this person, but
not gonna happen.
Yep.
Yeah. I run into that even with like friends of mine where we almost cross paths. Like Zach Peterson is a comic out of Omaha, and he's been down doing stuff in the Southwest, and like we haven't did any shows together, but like I'm sure we've been driving through places,
Yeah.
the same places, because he was just here for the Cloud Top Comedy Festival last weekend, and then he was doing some shows in Colorado. I was out in Arizona, but then I came down here through Colorado, and then now he's back in Colorado, and I'm down here. So it's like I'm just like missing him.
It's the comedy ships passing in the night.
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much. It's pretty interesting. But let's get down to what this podcast is about, which is bombing. And I always love to hear the bombing stories. So I would love to hear your story of a time where you felt you bombed.
Okay, so this was, I think, 2017, I think. I got booked to headline a high school girls volleyball team fundraiser. A friend of mine, like the people running it, had asked a friend of mine to headline it, and he couldn't, and he recommended me, and so they booked me. So I'm supposed to do an hour, and this is one of those shows where it's in like the all-purpose cafeteria gym room of a church, like one of those big things, and it's packed, and every table is adults, and it's a BYOB thing, so every table has multiple bottles of liquor at it, and most of the tables, those bottles of liquor were empty by the end of the night. Like everyone,
like not messing around.
Yeah, no,
like, this is our time.
Yeah, this was like, we are gonna raise money for our kids and then forget where it came from. Like, it was that kind of show. So
we're gonna have a reason for spending all this money on this fundraiser.
Yeah, and
it'll be that we didn't realize we were doing what we were doing because we were too intoxicated.
And it's in this place called Washington, Pennsylvania, which is about 45 minutes to an hour south of Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh, as soon as you get half an hour outside of Pittsburgh, it's like hardcore conservative country.
Okay.
Very, very right wing, MAGA area. Mm-hmm. So going into the show, I thought, all right, I don't do a lot of political comedy, but I'm going to specifically not do any kind of political stuff tonight. And the show is myself, two other Pittsburgh comics, and we find out the host of the show is the coach of the girls' volleyball team.
Oh, good times.
Yes. So the place is jam-packed, and before the show starts, one of the organizers comes over to me and says, hey, we're doing a 50-50 raffle during the night tonight. We want to do the 50-50 raffle before your set. And I said, no. That's a very bad idea. Because if you stop the show, that kills the energy, that kills everything. You are going, it's not going to work. Can you do the 50-50 raffle after my set at the end of the night? And she's like, yeah, we can do that. That'll be fine. I'm like, all right, great. Easy enough. So the show starts. The high school girls volleyball coach does like 2 to 3 minutes of material like as himself and then goes, but I know you're not here to see me. You're here to see Reverend Bubba. And he steps behind a curtain, comes out with fake teeth and fake glasses, doing like this bad preacher voice. And does 15 minutes, and Reverend Bubba does 15 minutes of inside jokes about the players. So Reverend Bubba kills.
I'm sure.
Audience loves Reverend Bubba. Reverend Bubba brings up the first comic and then leaves.
Just leaves.
Leaves the building.
Just done. It's like, I did my job. I did my time, brought up the comic. I'm out.
Yeah, so not only is he bailing on his hosting duties, he's bailing on the fundraiser for his team.
Wow.
And so the other comics are like, okay, crap, Reverend Bubba just left. I guess we have to introduce each other and do like that kind of thing.
Yep.
So first comic goes up, does like 10, 15 minutes, does fine. Second comic goes up, does 10, 15 minutes, that's fine. I'm standing by the side of the stage, ready to go up, and the organizer comes over to me and just goes, we're just going to take 5 minutes and do the 50-50 raffle now.
Oh, even after you had told him.
And I said, that's not what we agreed to, but I can't stop you from doing that.
Yep.
So the 5-minute break for the 50-50 raffle took a half hour.
Of course it did.
And when the show stops for a half an hour, people assume the show is done.
Yep.
People have been eating. They are hammered. The 50-50 raffle winner is celebrating. I'm just standing around like, what the hell is going on? How is this a thing? And at about a half hour point, one of the organizers walks up to like the microphone on the stage and just goes, she whispers, okay, here's your headliner, Zach.
Oh, man.
That's it. So my first 5 to 10 minutes is spent trying to get people just to sit down.
Yep.
And listen and not, do the things. I managed to get them to at least sit down a little bit, but they are so hammered where people, do you ever have the kind of like drunk audience member where they get like fact Tourette's where they just yell things out that are true?
Yep.
So I had my hair down, and my hair goes down to almost my waist most of the time. And this lady in the audience just at one point randomly yells out, "My husband has longer hair than you." And I was like, "Ma'am, I didn't acknowledge my hair or your husband or anything involving you."
That's how you know they're hammered.
Yeah, like, thank you for sharing that fact about your life.
The whole world needed to know that. Thank you for that.
Because I'm not really a crowd work comic. Like, as I don't like being mean to people. Like, if you're
I'm the same.
Yeah, if you're my friend, I'll rip into you all the time because I know I love you.
Yep.
But if you're a stranger, I'm never been like, "Hey, look at this guy. He looks like a whatever."
Yeah.
You know, unless something really unique happens that I can play with. Like, I was doing a show once and somebody's phone went off, but it was the Metal Gear Solid alert noise. So I quickly ducked down like I was trying to hide in a box. But, and so it just goes on like that. And it is, there are maybe 3 tables in the front semi-listening. Everyone else is just talking. I'm like, all right, this show is a waste. There's nothing I can do, but I'm supposed to do an hour. I'm 20 minutes in. This is dead. It doesn't matter what I do. These people don't care about me. And so I'm going to work on new material just to get reps and say stuff. And a bit I was working on at the time, which is on my album, Brains Are Weird, was...
Nice plug.
Yes, thank you. Had that very well prepared. Is a bit about explaining mental illness via Donald Trump being president. When I started doing this for a very right-wing crowd.
Oh, no.
And as soon as I jump into this bit, another woman stands up from her table and screams out, "No!"
Oh, Jesus.
"Excuse me, ma'am, what's that?" She's like, "No!"
Oh, wow.
So I try to keep going, and the show, I hit about a half hour into my set. And I realized, like, all right, it doesn't matter. No one here cares. And they already gave me my check.
So you're just like, well, I just will end this.
Yeah, and I had my bag with me on stage, and the stage was right beside the door to leave. So I just put the mic back in the stand at about a half hour, said, "You folks get home safe." Went to my car, went to the first ATM I could to deposit that check.
Make sure it clears before they cancel it.
Yeah, because it was that thing of like, all right, if I have a bad set in good faith, I have a bad set. That's one thing.
Yep.
But if you sabotage my set to that extent, all right, you've broken the agreement.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
I've done the best I can.
You told them what you needed to try to make it a good show, and they went against that. They went against that advice. I had something similar to that happen to me, actually, just over the summer. It was a show that I was doing at an VFW. And same thing, the guy running the establishment. So it's only a 2-person show. Mm-hmm. Well, and you met Luke when you were in Sioux Falls. So Luke is opening. So it's a 2-man show. So he also has to introduce me. He's wrapping up, and as he's wrapping up, the manager's like, "Hey, we got to do the 50-50 drawing. Will you do the announcement? Whatever, blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, "I guess that's fine." It's like, he's like, "Can we take 5?" And like, I'm not going to stop the show. I mean, he's about to bring me up. So. Yeah. I mean, I can do the drawing for you or stall or something or whatever. And he's like, "All right, well." So then I get called up there and I'm like, "Well, hey, everybody, how's everybody doing?" And I'm like, "Well, basically I'm stalling." I'm like, "Hey, they got to do this. We got to see about this 50-50 drawing. They want me to do the announcement." And then he comes back. He's like, "Oh, we can't do it until exactly 9 o'clock. And so then I'm like, "Oh, okay, well, I guess it is like 10 to something like that." So I'm like, "All right, well, I guess we're going to
now that this is weird, we're going to continue.
Like there's some like local gambling regulation. Like no 50-50s can happen before.
So I just start going into my set, and then 9 o'clock hits, and I'm like, oh, it's 9 o'clock. You want me to do the drawing or whatever? And the manager's like, oh, no, they're just going to do it in the bar. So, like, he didn't even, because the bar was, like, a separate space. And didn't even, like, tell me. So, like, I had all that awkwardness that I had to throw in there.
Yeah, because a lot of people don't get, it's not like music where you can be like, all right, someone's string broke, we're just going to stop for a few minutes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, because also in a situation like that with, like, music, if they, somebody's guitar string breaks and they have to repair it, they can put on house music.
Yeah.
Till they get back up and running.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The drummer can do a beat and the singer can riff on stuff.
Yeah, they can do stuff still.
Yeah. And with comedy, it's just like, all right, it's like that thing about how like sharks have to keep swimming.
Yep.
Where if that energy stops, you're dead.
Yep, absolutely. Say that is exactly what it is with comedy. That momentum. Whenever I'm doing a show and somebody wants to even to put in an intermission,
yes,
it's like no intermission. We don't need an intermission.
Yeah,
people don't want to be here longer than they already are. Let's just
unless
keep the show going.
Yeah, unless you're doing like a 5-hour show.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, but you shouldn't be doing a 5-hour show.
No, but people try to.
And if you are, you're insane.
Yeah. So that as soon as you had said think of a worst bombing gig, that was the one that immediately came to mind.
No, absolutely. That sounds pretty horrific. It's funny because with comedy, it seems like a lot of the worst gigs tend to be like corporate type stuff.
Yeah,
and it's always something that could have been prevented. Yeah, and because I feel like, sorry to interrupt, but I just feel like if they didn't force that 50-50 drawing on you, because there was already momentum and everybody else was doing fine, I feel like you would have been able to just ride the wave and the show would have been good. But they did a complete reset on the show.
And if I didn't do well, at least then I know it's on me.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Like there's that thing of, okay, I bombed, but I know the reason is like this just wasn't my audience or I had a bad set versus like no, just going up from the start, I knew this was not going to go well.
Yeah. No, in a situation like that, were the other comics there or did they already bail?
They bailed too.
Oh, okay. Because I was gonna say, because in a situation like that, you could have almost been like, okay, we got to reset the show and see if one of them will go up and do another 5 minutes.
No. But, if it weren't for the other than being there to get paid, none of us would have been there otherwise. So
well, that's
and they gave us our checks before the show started, so it was like, all right, first guy goes up, does his set, leaves. Second guy does his set, leaves.
I'm out.
Yeah, I'm gonna go try to get on an actual show that'll make me feel good about my life.
Yeah, right. Because this is not it. This is not it.
Yeah, it often feels like the better the gig is paying, the more you have to be like, all right, this is probably gonna go sideways.
Oh yeah, yep, that's spot on. I feel like very rarely do those gigs end up going well. It's usually you're like, oh, I'm getting paid X amount. This is a lot of money for a show. Probably I'm going to pay for. I'm gonna work for this money. It sounds like a lot, but I'm going to work for this money.
Yeah,
because this show is probably gonna be a train wreck.
Yeah, and even thinking about like bombing stuff. I remember another good bombing experience was would have been my first ever paid gig, and I say would have because the owner stiffed us.
Oh no. Did he stiff you because the show was so bad?
Oh no! So basically, I was about a year or so into doing stand up, and a buddy of mine's like, "Hey, we need a third person to go do this show. You'll get paid $50 or whatever." So we drive out to middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, to a place called it's a Bubba. I don't know, Bubba's are cursed for me. It was a place called it was this place called Bubba's Big Red Barn and Grill, where they turned an old barn into a bar and grill, where it still has the big posts and everything, so it blocks the view of the audience. And everyone there had on either a NASCAR or NRA shirt or hat. One man was legitimately missing his thumbs.
Oh wow!
And so the headliner is this road comic, who I won't name because he's not worth naming. And the three of us go up there. And this was just we're all I don't mean to be egotistical when I say smart comics, but this was not this was kind of a dumb comedy audience, and this was none of our audiences. The three of us go up there and just eat a big pile of shit in a row. And then the headliner goes up and he does an hour of street jokes.
Oh wow.
and he kills. The crowd loves him. And so we're all hanging around after the show, and my one friend, like the most senior of the three of us, he's like, no, we got to wait here, and the owner will come over and pay us. And we're standing around, and the other guy who was on the show had like just quit smoking, so he was extra aggravated.
Oh, I'll bet.
And we're standing around for like 20 minutes, and we all hate this place, and none of us want to be there. And the most senior comic among us goes over to the owner and comes back 5 minutes later and just like, go to the car now. We're going. Let's go. And I'm like, what happened? He's like, well, explain in the car. Just go.
I would have explained it there, because then you should have,
So we were filling in because somebody else who was it was supposed to be like the three of us replaced a single person, basically.
Okay, yeah.
Who had to drop out at the last minute for whatever.
Yeah, it was probably a 2 or 3 person show, host, feature, headliner.
Yeah, and so apparently what the owner told my friend Derek was basically, I had a deal to pay that other feller. I didn't have no deal to pay you fellers.
Oh, my.
And I guess what he did was he gave all the money to the headliner, thinking the headliner would give us our cut. And then the headliner just took all the money and left.
Wow, what a piece of crap. I hate the road comics that are like that are so greedy and just...
Yeah.
Oh, so skeevy.
Yeah, it would have been like $25. It would have been my first paying gig.
But it's the principle.
Yeah.
That's what it boils down to. It's the principle. It doesn't matter how much it is. If you agree to do a show because you think you're going to get paid, whatever amount it is, you should be getting that amount.
Yeah, because it was still...
And then having like a headliner take all the money and then just dip out.
Yeah, because it was still like an hour outside of Pittsburgh.
Wow. That's awful.
Yeah.
I hope that headliner can, I hope he has bad karma.
Yeah.
I'm going to say what I really want to say, but save it for...
that's when we're not recording. I will share more, but yeah.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's just terrible. Now, when you have a bad show, what are things that you try to look for, or how do you analyze to try to prevent something happening again?
So a lot of it,
learning from your mistakes.
Yeah, it depends. Like, I'll start going into that analytic thing of like, all right, was I off? Was this not my kind of crowd? Because the thing that's always so hard with stand up is like with music. Okay, I'm going to a country music show. I'm going to a rap show. I'm going to a punk show. There's a genre.
Yep.
And people like a genre. With stand up, it's just it's supposed to be funny.
Yeah. Yep. Doesn't matter if you're doing storytelling or one-liners or whatever it is. You just that you're right. It's just you just got to be funny.
Yeah, and so
that's the expectation.
Yeah, and a lot of what I do is more storytelling and personal stuff, and some audiences love that, and some audiences hate that. Some audiences want, graphic sex jokes and stuff about making fun of people in the audience, and that's not who I am. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you just have to realize, okay, that's just not my crowd.
Yeah.
When it is your crowd and you were off, then a lot of it will just be like, okay, was I doing newer stuff? Was I doing older stuff? Was it the order I put things in? Like there's a joke I really love that I've learned over the past year that I can't do this joke early in a set. Mm-hmm. 'Cause it's very personal and it's very dark.
Yep. You got to get the crowd's got to like you before they'll allow you to tell that joke.
Yeah, and so if I do that joke near the end of a set, it usually goes over really well. But if you do it earlier on, because I don't know about you, but like I often will try, when I write something new, I'll try it at different points in the set. I'll try.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I've found, because, constructing a set is almost just as important as the joke itself, writing the joke and the placement of the joke. And I've found that I've had a joke that maybe was mediocre where I told it, but then I moved it around and then suddenly it became a better joke because not only was it at a different placement in the set, but it was with a different grouping of jokes.
Yeah.
And because of that, it just added on to all the other stuff.
Yeah, like that I remember was the most challenging part, and I imagine you went through this too, of like when you did your album, was deciding what order to do everything in.
Oh, God, yeah. Well, then I did 2 shows for mine, and I didn't do the same sets. I did most of the same material, but just because of organically, I ended up doing this other material that wasn't planned to be on the album. Mm-hmm. So yeah, which kind of was kind of a pain in the butt for the editing part because it's like, this crowd here was a bigger crowd than the crowd from the first show.
So yeah, the audio levels are going to be different.
So, yeah, the audience is a little different, and now I'm like, oh, but I told this joke Friday, but I didn't tell it Saturday, and I was like, oh, but I told this one Saturday, I didn't tell this one Friday, or tell it Friday.
Yeah.
So trying to like piece that in was kind of a pain, but that was my own like. But that's live comedy. It's supposed to be. I feel like the best live comedy is, not necessarily doing crowd work or riffing or whatever, but organic.
Yeah.
Like if you start with your set and if you deviate a little bit, but it's still a good set, that's.
Yeah, I mean, there are things that are on my album that I only said that night and I'll probably never say again. It just, when you have those things that hit you in the moment, like I was telling this story about like my inability to dance and like having to do choreography for a middle school play. And describing how I can't snap. I just never got snapping down. And as I was describing that on stage, it just hit me. And so I just suddenly go, I never learned how to snap, which I guess means it'd make a horrible Thanos. And that was the thing that we're like, I don't even do that story that often because the problem, also since I do a lot of storytelling stuff is I have stories that are 7, 8, 10 minutes. And so, if you're only doing a 10-minute set, it's like, all right, if I'm doing this story, it better work.
Yep.
And if it doesn't,
you're doing your whole set with that essentially one joke.
Yeah.
Yeah, one bit, I guess.
Yeah, and so that was the thing that was so nice with my album was being able to like, okay, I can do this, but then I also know I can do short stuff after. I can build some callbacks versus doing like the, the 10, 15-minute set where it's like, all right, well, the bulk of it's this, so I hope they like it.
Yeah. Did you put everything you recorded out when you did your album?
Yeah. So the album is one take straight through.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
The reason I ask is because, like, with mine, because I did the different material on different nights.
Yeah.
Well, and I also wanted to keep it under 50 minutes.
Yeah.
So I cut a lot of the stuff I recorded. But I was like, but that's okay because I had these, because I think I did an hour and 20 one night and an hour and 15 the next. And like I said, they weren't the complete set. They weren't the exact same sets. Most of it, I would say like 90% of it was the same, but that 10% was different. But what I got out of it is I put out an album of about 50 minutes, and now I still have another like 20 minutes of material that I'm not consuming on an album. I can still work on and hope, get it better for another album.
Yeah, and even like when I did mine, like I only had a chance to run through it as an hour once before I did the actual album recording. And that show was like at this small little place where like 7 people showed up. So it was really hard to even judge time and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought like, all right, well, if it took me an hour to do this much material for 7 people, I need to cut things. Because for a full crowd, there's going to be more there's going to be
more laughter, laugh breaks.
Yeah. So even with what I cut from the one run through I got to do, it still came out to like 70 minutes.
Wow.
And it was just a thing of like, all right, well, this, it was long still to fit on a single CD. And it was the thing of like, there wasn't anything I wanted to cut. There weren't any good organic places to cut. And I really liked the idea of it just being.
So you didn't do tracks on yours?
No, I mean it's tracks.
Oh, okay. You did cut it down to tracks. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, like, if I would have cut like a 5-minute chunk out somewhere, it wouldn't have worked.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I just wasn't sure because you said it was one continuous track, or set. So I thought maybe I was like, is that what it is? Just one track?
Like,
that's the album?
It's like one of those jazz records where it's just
you just hit play and it just goes.
Yeah. Oh, there's this really good bit at 47 minutes and 15 seconds. Hold on, I think I can get to it.
Yeah, that would be pretty amazing though. Just to record an album and just put it out straight through, no breaks. You're listening to all of this album.
Yeah.
Somebody looks at it, they're like, "Well, this is dumb. There's only one track on this album," and they hit play, and then like an hour later, they're like, "That was the longest track I've ever heard."
At that point, you're kind of just doing a one-person podcast, I think,
right? Yeah, just essentially. That's pretty much it. Now, with your album, you self-produced it, right?
Yeah. I mean, I hired a local sound guy. I know did the recording and mix it, but yeah, like I'm not signed to anyone. It was just one of those things where I thought I want to do this.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And a lot of influences on me creatively, not even necessarily for comedy's sake, come from like musicians I know that started their own labels and self-published, and then at least like I own I own the master recordings. This is mine. I can do whatever I want with it.
Now, when it was all said and done, how do you feel about it, and how do you feel? Do you feel like it was as successful as you wanted it to be? Or?
I mean, I didn't get to do all I wanted with it because I recorded it in 2019, and then the idea was in 2020 I'll really focus on doing road stuff and trying to promote my album.
Yep.
So that kind of took, because I've always had day jobs where I can't travel for comedy a lot. And Pittsburgh, like there's an improv in Pittsburgh, but they don't use a lot of local people. And everything else in Pittsburgh is mostly like, oh, you can make $50 on this show and things like that, where it's unless
like a little bit of money, but not like a ton. You're not going to make a living.
Yeah, so unless you're really on the road.
It's a good like what do you call it? Like I can't think of the word right now. I'm having a brain freeze
I describe
right now.
Pittsburgh comedy as like AA baseball. You've got another layer above you, and then you've got the major leagues.
Subsidize. That's the word I was looking. It's a good way to subsidize your income.
Oh yeah, no,
it's like a part-time job essentially.
Yeah, it's a great way to like, all right, cool, I made an extra $100 this weekend. I can go buy a video game, or like that. That's my fun money, that kind of thing. But it's not enough to like live off of, unless you're really traveling a lot.
Yeah. Well, and even that, it's not. Believe me.
Yeah.
I've been doing that pretty hard for the last year, like since early 2021 when things started opening up. I went full into comedy because I was getting ready for my album recording. I've been doing a lot of road stuff, like just full force, and it's not. It's not paying all the bills.
Yeah, and like, I'm fortunate my day job now is a lot more flexible about comedy and much more understanding. My old day job, I was working at a big hardware store chain where by the time I left, you got 1 weekend off every 8 weeks.
Oh my God, that's terrible. Yeah, definitely hard to do comedy when you can't get any weekends off.
Yeah, and then be like, oh, can I just like, and then sometimes it'd be good where it'd be like, hey, I have a show tonight at 8:00. Can I just like be done by 6?
Yeah,
and they'd be good with stuff like that, but it made it almost impossible to do anything out of town.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you got to have that time off to drive.
Yeah,
travel. You got to have that travel time, because that's another thing with comedy people don't realize. They think, oh, you just go somewhere and talk for an hour and then you get paid. It's like, no, I'm not just going and talking for an hour. I've got to drive 5 hours there, and then I got to, get ready for the show, do the marketing for show, the promotions, do all this, do the show. Then I have to drive all the way home. So, a 1 hour gig could be, essentially could be a 20-hour job.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like when you add all that other stuff.
Yeah, you spend time like, hey, let me contact local radio stations, see if I can get like on like a spot, like a 5-minute spot on one of their morning shows, or get this, or how can I get the show in a local paper? How can I get people to pay attention to the show? How can I, figure out the Facebook algorithm?
Which these days seems impossible.
Yeah,
because it seems like as soon as you figure it out, they change it.
Well, I think it's pretty much now just unless you give them money, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of it. A lot of it is if you're not, and even if you give them a little bit of money, it's not good. You got to give them a lot of money.
Yeah, because
they're looking for big businesses, not.
Yeah, because when I first put my album out, I think I bought like a $25 ad or something like that. Just I'll see what happens. Mm-hmm. And I didn't get a single purchase because of it.
Yeah, not surprised. Yeah, my album, it hasn't sold very well, which is, it's sold better than other projects that I've tried to do or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's still, again, it's hard to market.
Yeah,
trying to get people, because people don't. That's the other thing. People don't really buy digital music or comedy or whatever, like unless it's somebody famous or whatever. They mostly just stream everything. So and the money you get from streaming is nothing. Pennies on the dollar.
And at times, like I feel like Spotify is personally taunting me at times, because like the other day I got an email from Spotify, because you get those like, here's your monthly listener report. And it was like, congratulations, your listenership went up. You had 3 listeners this month.
That sounds like the ones I've been getting from Apple.
Yeah.
It's like your weekly Apple, the same thing, but it's like 0.
Yeah,
It's like, why are you sending this to me?
I'm being bullied by the
Quit
algorithm.
bullying me. I know nobody's listening to my album. You don't need to rub it in.
Yeah, or have like a friend of mine be like, "Oh yeah, hey, I was listening to your album the other day on Spotify. It was really good." I'm like, "Oh, good, you're the one listener. Great, thank you,
Appreciate you.
thank you for the fractions of a penny."
Yeah, I'm gonna put that in my bank, and when I get a whole penny, I won't be able to do anything with it because you can't really get anything for a penny anymore.
Yeah, the most success I had was Bandcamp. And I always tell people, like, if you're gonna buy it online, if you can buy it on Bandcamp, buy it there.
Yep, that's the same here. Yeah, I mean, it's done all right. I it's almost broke even what I put into it, and that's if I can get it to break even on what the amount of money I spent to produce it. If it's a wash, I'll call that a win.
That was my thought too. Like I've made a little bit of money from it, and that was my thought too. As long as it's not a loss, I don't care.
Yep, that's exactly it. Now, going back to comedy and the joke writing process, I'd like to hear a little bit of what your process is for when you think of an idea or how that, how you develop a joke, what's your evolution, and then kind of in addition to that, when you're working on a new joke, how long do you work on something before you say, all right, this joke is just not going to work, and you scrap it?
So for me, a lot of what I do is just talking about personal life stuff. Like one of my biggest influences to stand-up, while he's not a stand-up, is the spoken word of Henry Rollins, where it is very much like, I experienced this thing, let me tell you about it, and ideally you laugh. And so that's a lot of what happens for me as well, and that's what made, like, for me personally, joke writing so hard during the COVID shutdown, was because unless I'd be like, hey, so did you see the dog do that thing the other day? There's nothing new for me to talk about.
Yeah.
But now, I'm traveling more places. There's news to look at. There's my day job I can talk about. So a lot of it is just like, oh my God, this thing happened. Let me go into the larger, like, philosophical implications of this thing that happened. Like, so my day job is I work at, like, a distillery. It's also a bar. And this girl came in recently, who was newly 21, and she wanted to try our gin. And she said, I really want to try your gin because I love the Snoop Dogg song Gin and Juice. And then she turned to me and said, do you know who Snoop Dogg is? And as soon as she was gone, I was like, all right, now here's a bit.
Yeah,
like, that's
right.
perfect, of like going into the things of like, what kind of question is that to ask if you know who Snoop Dogg is?
All right, it's like, who doesn't?
Yeah, as like I like to say, like, when missionaries come to your house and say, have you heard of Christ? They know you've heard of Christ.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And
They're just trying to make their way in.
Yeah, and like, what does that say about me that a 21-year-old felt the need to ask me if I knew, like I know I'm a big white nerd, but I know who Snoop Dogg is.
Definitely not hip, apparently.
Yeah, like how unhip do I look? I know I grew up in the part of Pennsylvania that's called Amish country, but I'm pretty sure even the Amish at this point
know who he is. Yeah,
he's probably bought weed from them at some point.
Or exactly.
So stuff like that.
Probably his supplier.
Yeah, and then other times, like sometimes I'll think, because like I can write like jokes, like set up punchline jokes, but I'm not good at presenting them that way. So when I write jokes like that, I have to build them into some kind of a narrative. Like sometimes it'll be like I'll hear a thing and just, that like random misfire in your brain where it's like, all right, I don't know why this thought just hit me, but this thought just hit me. Like there's a thing I've been working on. I was doing it earlier in the year. Talking with people are like, oh, I'm traveling for the summer and things like that. And I was in a bar the one day and they were playing that Highway to the Danger Zone song. And my brain just went, are there other roads that go to the danger zone? Is it just the highway? Like, are there rural back roads that take you to the danger zone?
That's a really funny premise.
Yeah. So it was this thing of like, if you're making summer travel plans, if I can say, don't take the highway to the danger zone, take the rural back roads, enjoy the scenery, visit Meemaw's Danger Zone Antiques, spend
go on an adventure.
spend the evening in historic Danger Zone Village. Like
That's great.
Like that kind of stuff where it's just like, all right, I wasn't sitting down to write a joke. It was just I heard a thing and then a switch went in my brain that goes, wait, but what about?
Now, when you think of an idea like that, when it just pops in your head or whatever,
Yeah.
do you physically write something out? Or do you write it out? Or
Sometimes. A lot of the time I post stuff on Facebook.
just see what it does on Facebook?
Yeah. And then like,
So technically you are writing it
Yeah.
out. I mean,
Yeah. But it'll be like,
you are typing it out.
yeah, but it's like, okay, here's a stupid thought I had at my job. I'll post this on Facebook. If a lot of people react to it, maybe I'll try it on stage.
Yeah, which is that's a good way to, kind of test them to get an idea whether it's worth taking to the stage or not.
Yeah.
Although sometimes the social media can be misleading.
Oh, definitely.
Can definitely be misled
Yeah.
on the social media. When you tell a joke and the joke doesn't land, it bombs, or you feel like you're losing the crowd and you're starting to bomb, in that moment, what goes through your mind?
A lot of it is where I'm at. So I try to structure, because again, like I'm not good at writing, like, or at least presenting short jokes, is I try to structure jokes with layers to them. Like, all right, here's like the more intelligent part of the joke. Here's the dumber part of the joke. Here's like the local reference part of the joke. And I can pick up on like, oh, like I have this bit about that I used to do on my album about describing a baseball game as the 5 stages of grief, like for the psychological idea. And so if that works in the audience, I can tell like, oh, are they laughing because it's a sports joke? Or are they laughing because like they like the more intellectual part of it? And so I can kind of do the inverse then of when something doesn't hit. I'm like, all right, this crowd doesn't like smart jokes. Do more jokes about working at how you used to work in a hardware store. Do more dating jokes, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's just, nope, okay, I love that one, and that just didn't hit. And you just have to be like, all right, well, let's keep moving. Because, like we were saying earlier, you can't stop. You can't.
Nope, got to keep going. Got to get through the time.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
Unless, of course, you've already been paid, and then you can run out the back.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Plan your exit ahead of time.
I guess I don't know that I necessarily let you were talking about your writing process or whatever, but the follow-up question to that was when you're working on a joke and it's just not going the way you want, how long do you work on something before you're just like, I got to put this on before you shelf it?
I don't know. I don't really have an exact time because a lot of the time for me, like unless I'm doing more than 10 minutes, I don't usually even write a set list. Like I have an idea of, okay, like here's what I want to start with, here's what I think I want to end with, and then I'll just kind of like freeform go.
I go off and on that. Sometimes I write a set list, sometimes I don't.
Yeah. And so a lot of the time it will be like something will hit me like I'll be talking like, oh, I could do this now, and I'll do this now. And there'll be times where like, oh, here's a joke from 8 years ago that I totally forgot about it, but it just hit me. Yeah, sure. We'll see if that, it's one of those things of very rarely do I like say, okay, this is just never going to work. But there's a lot of stuff where like it's like, oh yeah, I did that bit 7 years ago. That's the last time I did that. But if I needed to, like I'd probably need to like take a minute to like remember it properly. But I could probably at least try to do it again and be like, oh right, because the thing is too, we all grow as writers, grow as performers, and there are things where you can write a joke and realize like, okay, I'm not at the level I need to be at yet to make this joke work the way I want it to. And then, okay, no, it's been 2 years later. I'll come back to this bit, and oh no, I'm a much better comic. I can actually tackle this in a better way.
Yep,
things like that.
Yep. Which, yeah, I mean, especially when it comes to like you said, writing and performing, I hope as a comic, I hope we're evolving because. When a comic isn't evolving, that's when they're in trouble.
Yeah, no, I mean, and you always got those comics too. You got the people that like have been coming to the open mic for 8 years and doing the same 5 minutes.
Yep. Yeah. And it's so I'm just like, I don't get it.
Just why?
Especially if it doesn't. It's one thing if they're doing like the same 5 minutes that just crushes every time.
Yeah.
But like a lot of times when you see that situation, it's 5 minutes that is absolutely terrible, and it's like, why are you not trying to change it a little bit?
Yeah.
Try something different.
Yeah, and for me, my favorite part of comedy is the writing process. Like if somebody, if you have one of those like, magic wish monkey paw things or something where it's like, all right, you can be like a famous comedy actor, but you're doing other people's words. Or you can be a writer where unless somebody had like, oh my God, I love this person's writing, nobody will like recognize you on the street. I'll take the writing job instantly. Zero hesitation. But also a lot of my jokes, very rarely do I write things out word for word.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of like bullet points and a general concept.
Yeah, kind of like an outline.
Yeah. And then I'll just like through repetition, it becomes the final thing because I like having room to improvise, to mess around, because if I've found for me, if I write something out word for word, I'm more focused on getting my lines right than being like in the moment, because my style on stage is very conversational. And so if I'm not having that conversation with the audience, if I'm more focused on this is my right exact word, it takes away.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. That's very similar to what I do too, because I don't hardly ever write physically. I just think of ideas and then I, write on stage essentially.
Exactly.
I kind of go through in my head how I want to say it, and then I say it out loud and try to work it out from there.
Mm-hmm.
Because like you said, it gives you. I'm not really an improv person, but it does give you room for some improv or some ad lib, or you think of a line on the spot that's something you can add to that joke.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, this has been fantastic. We're already at almost an hour. We should probably wrap up. I'd like to go out positive, so we got a couple things that we're going to end on. One is we talk about bombing, so I always like to talk about a favorite show.
So other than my album recording, I don't think there's a favorite single show, but can I say a favorite reaction?
Sure.
So I do a lot of mental health comedy.
Okay.
And this has happened a few times, but I've had an audience member stop me after a show and say, like, seeing you explain your issues and what you struggle with and being open and being funny about it either help me understand a friend or a family member better or help me feel more comfortable with my own issues. I had somebody who say, like, they, someday they want to get a tattoo of something I said.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a great
I don't know if they ever did
compliment.
it yet, but that's what they told me.
That's a great compliment.
Yeah, because it helped them, like, put into words the negative crap in their brain and help them better understand it, because it can be so hard to explain verbally when you get into those dark places. So for me, it's never a single show. It's the thing of, like, obviously comedian laughter has to be the goal, but the idea that I've helped someone understand themselves better or understand someone else better is better than any laugh I will ever get. Like, I don't care if I ever make a living or make it or whatever you want to say in comedy. Knowing that I've helped other people, to me, it's the most important thing.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Final thing, we have the Art of Bombing Get Pumped playlist. Doesn't have to get you pumped for comedy necessarily. Just a song that just gets you pumped for things. What's a song you'd like to add to the playlist?
Let's see here. I'm going to say a song by, there's a rapper named Spose I really like.
Okay. I know Spose.
Yeah. So I would...
awesome.
Yes.
No, you're not. Don't lie.
Yes. And he's much more than that song. He's
I know.
One of my,
I listen to a lot of his stuff.
Yeah.
But.
So I would probably say either his song "All You Need Is You," because that's the song I was listening to when I decided to record an album, or his song "Knockin' on Wood," which he was nice enough to actually let me use as my outro music for my album.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
And my intro music for the album was from another rapper I really like named MC Lars, who I reached out to each of them just individually being like, hey, I'm a really big fan. I'm self-producing this comedy album. I really can't, like, pay you anything, but it would be an absolute honor to have, to walk on and off stage to music from the two of you. It'll be like a few seconds of your song, but technically it would be your song on my album. I understand if you're not willing to do that, but there's no harm in asking. And they both said yes, and it blew my mind.
That's amazing. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Congrats on that. Well, where do you want to direct people? Where can they find you online?
So you can find my album Brains Are Weird pretty much everywhere online. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at the letter Z, Funk, yeah, YEHA, like fuck yeah, but funk. I have a Facebook, it's Zack Funk Comedy, that I barely ever update because it's Facebook and it doesn't really matter, it feels like. But yeah, find me online, listen to my album, check it out. My YouTube, I believe, is Joker Funk. Because I made that before I started doing comedy, just because I'm a big fan of the Joker. Also, on YouTube, I am the co-host of a video game and other nerdy channel with my roommate Joe called Is It Worth a Sandwich? Where we play video games, and the title comes from eating food, playing a video game, and reviewing it, and basically saying, are you better off spending money on food or a video game? But we do other stuff as well. We make original nerdy cocktails. So yeah, check out Is It Worth a Sandwich as well.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you for doing this, Zach.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Art of Bombing podcast, hosted and produced by Dan Bublitz Jr. and Josh Shirley for Blitzed Entertainment. Nobody Had a Podcast called The Art of Bombing was written and performed by John Holt. The stand-up soundbite bumper was provided by Joe Nicola Music. Be sure to follow and subscribe to The Art of Bombing wherever you get podcasts. You can connect with us on the web at artofbombingpod.com or on all social media platforms at Art of Bombing Pod.